Meaningful transformations.
It is a gradual process. When they come, they've come from the outside world and they're full of excitement to be there, but they're still thinking about all their activities they have at home. And slowly over the week of doing activities regarding meditation, how to live classes, all sorts of activities that focus on their relationship with God. And we also have a theme which helps promote this. They gradually change over the week. And it's very gradual. And you probably wouldn't even see the change unless you saw them from beginning and then pick them up at the end of camp. But they get a little quieter, more introspective, but yet they're still full of enthusiasm, but in a different way, a lot more joyful. And sometimes they don't even know how to contain it, and they just start dancing around and singing, and it's just a joy to watch their transition.
You know, you'd see a boy come through and he had a rough week, and you had a rough week because you were with him throughout the whole thing, and he comes back the next year and there's just a change about him, and he's trying hard, and you just see this success of how he's just kind of evolving through camp and evolving through his life. And when you see that change taking place, I think that's really struck me, just to see the boys come back. And I love how the camp really gives a lot of boys a chance to change. And
I've seen a lot of transition in boys from when they experience camp for the very first time. They're very shy and nervous, and they don't know how to be themselves because they're in a totally new environment. And then I see how the other boys will accept this one boy and just include him and be able to make him feel very accepted, very invited, very much a part of the group. And I was able to see that same boy year after year be able to just have more excitement year after year when he comes, and really getting more involved in the program, just really getting soaked up in Master's teachings and what the camp is conveying to him in terms of Master's teachings and how to live and so forth.
The older girls, you really see them in tune with their spiritual life. They're making decisions about their spiritual life. That's their own. But yet in a very fun, relaxed way.
But I'm grateful for the training that Master has given me and the ability to relate to these boys. But mostly I'm grateful for the boys and the experience that they have as they're in our cabin and as they progress through the older cabins and then become staff in training and then become leaders themselves. It's such a wonderful experience for these boys. You just can't imagine.
I think the best indication of how the boys have changed as a result of the program is to see them grow up through the program. When they're in their early 20s to late 20s, and they come back and they want themselves to be group leaders. Or you find a young man of 18, 19, 20 that goes away to college and you don't see them for 5 or 8 years. And then they show up at one of our staff meetings and they want to desperately be involved in the program because it was so influential and supportive in their life. What you hear again and again is how they really felt loved as being a part of the program growing up. And it never leaves them, regardless of where they go. They always will come back, and that's pretty much thematically what you hear again and again with these boys that come back to the program.
You can see these boys transform into young men. A couple of the boys that have been in my cabin have gone on to be group leaders themselves and people who serve at convocation, and they've been in SRF, committed their lives to SRF, and sometimes being in the boys' youth program is one of the very early contacts that they've had with SRF, and it's kind of cemented their relationship with Master and the gurus. It's as sweet as can be. I don't know how else to say it. It's just
Sometimes you don't realize how much camp has affected them until a couple of weeks later, a few years later. I had a same cabin last year as I did a couple of years ago, and it was just wonderful to see how they had matured in those 2 years. And some of the comments they made me realize how much camp had affected them. That their spiritual life had gotten deeper, that they were more in tune with Master. Sometimes it's not really apparent to you, but you hear it from their parents.
like something will come up in the program while we're doing something. A boy will have a hard time with something, he'll be having a struggle, and you can kind of take him aside, and I think it's what they call in education a significant learning opportunity. And something comes up, you can explain it to him, and sometimes they'll just get it in this most miraculous way, and they'll do something that they didn't think they could do. And one of my boys said, and this was a 10-year-old, he said, "Mr. Bass, I don't want to do this." I said, "Okay, that's fine," and let some other boys do it. And I went over and talked to him, and I said, "You know, you don't have to be afraid if that's what you're worried about. I'll be right behind you. I'll be right behind you. Won't let anything happen to you. But you don't feel obliged to try. It's just up to you." And then we went on a little while, and he came to me and said, "Mr. Bass, okay, I'll try." And he tried, and he did better than almost anybody in the whole group. And he was so stoked. The program is filled with things like that.
And to say that these kids are special is a real understatement.
And I could see the devotion and the joy in the boys' faces, and it's very cool to be able to see them right at the start of the week and how they just make a 180-degree turn transition at the end of the week. And that's just pure testimony on how Master's teachings really do work and how they really do change a person's life.
I was in the San Diego airport some years ago, just traveling, I forget where I was going. I think I was living up north at the time and going back. And a man came up to me in the airport, a man of about 35 or something like that, and said, "You look familiar to me." And I said, I don't know, my name is Al Bass. And he said, "Oh, Mr. Bass, I remember I was in your group at youth program when I was about 13. And when he identified who he was, I remembered him. I remember all these boys. They're all so individual. I've had, hundreds of boys over the years, and I remember each and every one of them." And he was telling me that the year that he spent in our cabin at Boys Youth Program was one of the most memorable he'd ever had. And he'd always wanted to get back, and one thing and another, and now he had a family of his own with children and one thing and another, and he'd fallen away from the teachings a bit. And he said, "But I really want to get back," and so we stayed in correspondence after that, and I got him hooked up again with the lessons and one thing and another, and he's back on the path, so that was very sweet.